So, hello, here we have Clara Chemtov with us today. Did I say your name right? I feel really bad if I didn't.
You got it.
All right, wonderful. So, let's begin with a few icebreakers, shall we? What ice cream flavor sums up your personality today?
Whoa. Whoa, you said icebreaker. That's a deep question. I would say, well, right now, my flavor that I enjoy that I have in the freezer is Breyer's Heavenly Hash. It's got like a bit of everything in it. Uh, that feels like me. Got like some of this, some of that. Multifaceted person.
It's actually a really good one. I don't know which one I would be. I feel like I would want to be something just super simple, maybe like strawberry, because it's like kind of tart, but also really like sweet and delicious and makes you keep wanting to go for more. But I don't know how that relates to personality. So that was a tough one, but that was fun.
Yeah.
And another one, let's see. If you could eat only one food for the rest of your life, what would you eat?
Either sushi or, this is kind of a cheater answer, but sandwiches. Because it could be any kind of sandwich.
Oh, true,
But
true.
yeah, but probably sushi.
hmm I feel like there was like this huge debate about our hot dog sandwiches or something. Then I feel like if that counted, then you would like
I'm
truly have
opinionated.
everything.
So here's what I have to say about hot dogs. I think that if the sandwich is cut on the transverse axis, like
hmm
the two pieces of bread are divided on the transverse axis, then it's a sandwich. And then if they're
Yes.
cut like on either the frontal or sagittal plane, depending how you turn it, then it is not a sandwich. So people always say like a hot dog's not a sandwich because like the bun is connected, but the same could be said for Subway sandwiches.
I mean, true, but I
So
don't know. I haven't really thought that deeply, but I always felt like if it has bread, it's a sandwich. My thinking about it was like super simple, but you had like the whole transverse axis and everything
I
going on.
thought
So
about this.
amazing. Okay, so what was your experience when competing for nationals? Because I know you had competed last year as well. So walk me through that. Like, what was it like going through this whole journey two times and then finally winning that Miss Teen Personality Eastern Canada crown?
It was really exciting. The first time was just a whirlwind of excitement because it was Personality Pageants Canada's first ever pageant.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously there was something really special about being a part of the first of anything.
Yeah.
But I'd say the second time was even better because I got to experience it again, meet a whole new group of people, and ultimately just learn more about myself, dive deeper into my platform, develop more, like, acquire new skills. Just really,
Mm-hmm.
really exciting, really beneficial.
How would you say it was different from like the first year to the second year? What would you say changed? Would it be maybe how you changed or how the pageant itself changed?
I'll answer both of those. So first off, the areas of competition changed. There were
Mm-hmm.
several different ones. There was outfit of choice. There was the either photo essay or virtual diary. Um, so that was different. And then I'd say I changed because I was ready. The first time
Mm-hmm.
around was the first time anyone had ever heard of a personality pageant, right?
True.
So you kind of just go in, say, I'll do my best, but you never really know what to expect. But then going into this one, it was my fourth pageant with Personality Pageants Canada. So at that point, I was like, okay, I think I know what I need to do to show up as the best version of myself. I know what I need to do in the interview. I know how much effort and creativity it'll take for
Mm-hmm.
all the video submissions. So I'd say it was easier and harder the second time.
I feel like that's what's really wonderful about pageantry is because it's not just that experience, it's that you learn more about yourself. Because I can definitely say that I have changed so much over the course of my journey because I began in, I think, 2021. And if I compare myself now to what I was back then, I would be like, oh, well, do not do that in a pageant. Like, I would completely change my experience. And I think I got to do that this time around. And I could clearly see that you got to do that as well because you learn so much and then you learn about yourself and how to apply the skills that have changed and grown over these years, which I think is one of the things that people don't really think about when they think about pageantry, how much you grow over that entire experience.
100%. And then added to that, the fact that the skills you gain in pageantry translate into real life.
hmm
Like the amount of times that I've felt comfortable in a job interview or having to speak in front of my class or having to do a solo in front of my class. I study dance, so
Oh,
we're
wow.
often
Tell me more
we're
about
often
that.
dancing in front of each other. Um, but these are all skills that I've acquired through pageants, and the confidence that I've developed is mostly thanks to pageantry. So I think
Hmm.
people don't realize that all of the hard work you put into a pageant, it's not for nothing. A girl gets crowned, you move on, but you don't suddenly lose everything you've acquired.
Exactly. And how would you say, like, your experience as a dancer, as like a dancing student, how would you say that influenced the way you saw pageantry, or maybe the way you went into pageantry, like your mindset?
I would say that dance is helpful because, um, I mean, it necessarily improves your confidence for the most
Mm-hmm.
part. At the end of the day, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. When you learn dance and when you're in an educational dance environment, it's a constant quest to improve yourself, or it should be. You know what I mean? So every
Mm-hmm.
day is an opportunity to try again, to try a bit harder, to think differently, to think, what did I do yesterday, and how can I take that to the next level? And so that's literally what we're talking about in terms of pageants. You compete once, you think, okay, what can I do next time? How can I improve?
Mm-hmm.
How can I be more authentic? How can I show my best qualities? So I'd say that dance kind of gave me a sense of resilience and determination. And that has helped in pageants, so that even when I lose, which is quite often, I can say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, but what did I take from this? And how can I do better next time?
That's a beautiful thought because people lose in pageants and in dance competitions way more than they win. And when you finally get that victory, that's something that you've worked hard for probably many, many years. It's very rare that somebody will win a pageant on their first try, I would say. And out of curiosity, what kind of dance do you do?
I mainly focus in contemporary, and then I supplement my training with, a little bit of this, that, this, that. But, what I usually tell people is, when you're watching dance, you don't understand what's going on because it's just so weird.
Hmm.
That's the kind of stuff I like.
Oh, that's so interesting though. I love like the dances where you're so lost and you don't understand what's going on because then you just want to keep watching because you don't know what's coming next. And I really love that because I have not a single like bone in my body that can dance. No rhythm whatsoever. So I really really respect it when I can see somebody that dances well because to express yourself using your body is not something that's very easy and it requires a lot of confidence, I would say, to be able to get up on that stage. So I feel like that's really amazing. So good job with that.
That's kind of you. I would beg to differ, though, because I think naturally when we're born,
Hmm.
we're not ashamed of dancing. Do you know what I mean? Like when you look at children, they haven't yet been taught to be embarrassed or to be shy.
True.
Like when you're talking to a 3 year old and you say dance, a 3 year old's gonna go like, woo! So I don't know. I think it's just somewhere along the line we get taught that, oh, unless you can dance or sing or whatever it is, unless you can do it in this particular way, that means you're not good at it and that means you shouldn't do it in front of other people. So
Hmm.
when you tell me, like, I don't have a dancing bone in my body, like, I don't think that's true.
Hmm.
I think you do. I think, maybe society has told you you don't, but
Well, let's hope that I do. Maybe
I
one
believe
day
in
I'll
you.
discover my secret talent for a dance form that will exist in 50 years that doesn't exist now.
Yes, I believe in you.
Hmm. And I know your platform is eating disorders. Could you tell me more about what led you to picking that platform? Because I haven't really heard of many people talking about that issue.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head. Not many people talk about this issue, so someone has to, am I right?
Hmm.
But originally, when I entered my first pageant, I had actually just started recovery from an eating disorder.
Oh.
And yeah, right? So I thought to myself, okay, pageants are typically a space where people think there are body stereotypes, where people think that they should be eating a certain way to
Hmm.
look a certain way. And so I thought, how can I make this experience beneficial, not only to myself, but also to everyone who's watching me go through this path, right?
Hmm.
So I figured if I have the opportunity to pick a cause and to raise awareness for it, I might as well talk about the thing that I need most that I'm not seeing. So in my life at that point, it was really hard to even acknowledge that I had an eating disorder and to acknowledge that I needed help because there was no one around me who was sharing that they had the same struggle. So I just figured at this point, if no one else is going to do it, then I will.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I decided that my pageant journey would be intrinsically linked with my eating disorder recovery by sharing my own story, sharing other people's experiences, just getting the word out and educating people on what eating disorders are, and most importantly, that recovery is possible.
That's really beautiful because what I see is so dangerous is every now and then you will see pageant contestants who are starving themselves and who are bragging about going on diets where they have like nothing but water and maybe like a salad or so every now and then. And you see people who are supporting that and saying that's amazing way to go. I feel like there is a fine line between healthy and just completely wrong, because you shouldn't go about trying to be slimmer or have more muscle in a dangerous way. You should always try to be as healthy as you can. And I feel sustainability is a key word that most people forget when it comes to your even mental and physical health. Like if you're going to stick to an exercise regime, maybe don't go to the gym so many days that you kill your body and that you feel awful and that your mood is completely like destroyed. And maybe don't do elimination diets which completely take away things that you want to eat. Maybe ice cream or chocolate is the a motivation for you. Like you may, after you pass a test or win a crown, you want to eat a little bit of something that you enjoy. I don't think that eliminating anything is a good idea. It's just everything in moderation, like an 80% 20% principle, where 80% of the time you're doing things that are good for you, good for your body, and 20% of the time you can just let loose and have some fun. Because I don't think the journey would be enjoyable if you don't allow yourself to enjoy each moment and keep thinking, I will enjoy myself once I get to this point, once I win that crown, once
For
I
sure.
finish this
See, that's
competition. Hmm.
that's something I like to tell people because I do hear it a lot that, ultimately it's about my long term goals, so I'm going to sacrifice and do whatever it takes
Hmm.
to get my long term goal. And it's morbid and it's scary, but something I invite people to think about when you're on your deathbed, are you going to want to remember the amazing time that you had with your friends at a pub where you laughed and ate and shared memories? Or are you going to want to remember the time where you didn't go with your friends because you were so worried about eating a hamburger,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I always think, like, what is my future self going to want to remember? And so every time I'm faced with a decision like, ooh, should I really eat that? Like, is that really gonna be good for me, be helpful to me? It doesn't even have to be the deathbed mentality, but in 10 years, am I gonna look back and want to remember, like, wow, yeah, I deprived myself of something good? Or am I gonna wanna say, heck yeah, you know, I enjoyed my ice cream? So I think our concept of health in general at the moment is a little askew. So I always encourage people to think about what healthy means to them and what it would take for them to reach those goals, not based on what anyone else is telling them.
Yeah, I've seen so many instances of like friends who would say, like, I want to go out with you guys, but I really can't eat this, or I really don't want to do that, or I don't want to do that. And I almost got to that point where I was doing that to myself, and I took a moment where I said, "Hey, wait, is this right? Yes, I shouldn't be maybe eating out every single day, but the few times that I do I really want to deprive myself? Do I really want to say no to like a slice of chocolate cake every month or so that I go to eat out?" And I feel it's not logical at all to just push yourself to this point where you're not giving your body the respect it deserves, where you're trying to take away from the things that you enjoy. And I feel like that is so dangerous. And both sides of the spectrum really are dangerous, to overindulge and to not indulge at all, to the point where you're just upset. Because I feel like eating so badly can affect your mental health if you're eating too much of something that's bad for you, or if you're not eating enough of what's bad for you, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I would even encourage you in this conversation to think about what the word bad means. When people
Hmm.
talk about good and bad foods, what does that actually mean? Why? Why?
As,
Is it
yeah.
because of what our society has determined to be good and bad for the vast majority of people that doesn't necessarily apply to you? You know what I mean? So even when I hear people
Hmm.
say, like, this is good for me, this is bad for me, why? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, think about this. Think strongly about the narratives that you're giving yourself about food, and just always ask yourself why. There's never a problem with having a specific mindset, but you
Hmm.
just always want to make sure you're doing it for reasons that make sense to you and not just because everyone thinks it's the way to think. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. I feel like many people, when it comes to food, many people will think that all fats are bad for you, but they don't realize that the
Wrong.
fats that are in meat, let's say, or in like beef or some such, they're actually really good for you. They actually fuel your body in ways that nothing else can. And from a biological perspective, you could really get into it and talk about like cis and trans fats and which is better for you, which is worse for you. But at the end of the day, it's, are you only believing that this is healthy because of the mainstream, or are you believing that because you have had a thorough talk with yourself? You have looked at, let's say, maybe you've looked at science to say, okay, this, I want to have this much muscle, I want to be able to lift this much weight, and so this is what I must eat to get there? Or are you just doing it because you don't want to feel like you're being left out from the fads, because that can be so dangerous.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you also hit a really important point there about how difficult it is to stay away from whatever mainstream diet
Mm-hmm.
culture is telling us because it's everywhere. It's everywhere. People always talk about like fashion magazines, like, sure, it's there, but it's everywhere. Any ad you see, when you even look in movies about like which kind of bodies are being promoted, which kind of people, which
Mm-hmm.
skin tone, which body shape, because they're all interlaced, right? So, just on that note, in terms of like people checking in with themselves and what they need, I'm a really big fan of intuitive eating.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's honestly the way to go for most people. If you're coming from a place of restriction, it can't be attainable right away for the most part. But I would say a big piece of it is also just checking in with how you feel when you're eating.
Mm-hmm.
If you really listen, like your body gives you so many cues about what to eat and what not to eat, but we're so oversaturated with external signals and
Mm-hmm.
external advice that it's often really hard to tune into those cues. But I always bring it back to the example of a little kid or a baby. You know, when a baby is hungry, they're gonna cry and be like, I'm hungry, I want food, and
Mm-hmm.
when they've had enough, they're gonna stop. And it's
Exactly.
that simple. So again, you know, how can we reconnect with, I guess, those primal signals, those primal cues that our body is giving to say what it is we need? So there's a lot of really
Yeah.
interesting nuance to get into there.
If you had to share about eating disorders in general and give advice to a random person, let's say, what would you say if that person is struggling with an eating disorder? What would you tell them to get through it?
I would say the first, most important, and probably most difficult thing would be to reach out for help.
Hmm.
Nothing
Absolutely.
is more essential than talking about it with people. Eating disorders live and thrive in secrecy because nobody wants to disclose they have an eating disorder because of all the stigmas attached to them. And a lot of the time, people in our everyday life don't know a lot about eating disorders, so it's difficult to even bring up the conversation. But I promise that once you share with someone else, whether it's a friend, a parent, a teacher, a counselor, anybody helps. It's
Hmm.
like an enormous mountain being lifted off of you. And just being able to share that with someone and being able to know that you're not alone with whatever you're going through,
Hmm.
it can really be a kickstart to the rest of your life.
Hmm. Exactly. And what advice would you want to give for like our upcoming delegates who will be competing this January for the regional titles?
It's always really exciting. Every time it comes around to pageant season, I just love it. I love getting to know all the contestants. I
Hmm.
love getting to hear about their platforms. I would say get to know yourself as well as possible. Because
Hmm.
this pageant, it's not about, who can speak the best, who can write the best. It's really not about that. It's about who is willing to put themselves out there and let the world see them for who they are. So I would say spend some time with yourself. Think about your goals. Think about what you want. Think about why
Hmm.
you're entering. What is your platform? Why is that important to you? And if you know all of these things and you're able to answer all of these questions about yourself, you are good to go.
That's wonderful. But I can hardly believe that that season is already coming around. It feels like it was just
Ah,
yesterday that I got crowned and like that you got crowned Miss Eastern Canada. It's just, it's going by so fast. I feel like I still haven't experienced everything yet that this year has to offer. So I want to go out with a bang with with all of these interviews.
how do you feel about passing on your title?
Bittersweet, actually. I'm sad, of course, because I kind of don't want to give it up, but at the same time, I'm excited. Like this sash and the crown has given me so many opportunities that I otherwise wouldn't have, and I'm excited to give that to somebody else. So even though I feel a little bit upset that maybe I won't have this title anymore, I will still always be like Miss Teen Personality Ontario 2022, and somebody else will be for 2023. So it's not as though I'm losing the title, it's that I'm gaining another sister in our community. So I'm very excited for that. I feel like that's going to be a lot of fun.
And then you get to be their biggest cheerleader.
Exactly, exactly. I feel like I will just support my successors so much. I'll be like, you can do it, you can go win
You'll be like,
nationals. Exactly. Well, which will be amazing. So thank you so much for joining me.
thank you for having me.
Well, this was wonderful. I'm so glad I got to learn more about your platform, and I'm hoping that once I put this video up, everybody else will be able to learn more about it too, and then maybe check out your stuff and see more about eating disorders because really people don't talk about it enough, and I feel like more people are suffering through this than we realize.
100%.
Mhm.
100%. It's estimated that over 1 million Canadians are dealing with it right now.
Oh,
And
really?
that's
That
only
many?
the cases that are reported. So, like I said before, eating disorders live in secrecy. So, the amount of
Hmm.
people who are struggling with an eating disorder but don't disclose it is way bigger than the actual number of people who do talk about it. So, you can only imagine the millions of people in Canada alone who are going through this.
I would think that number has to be way more than 1 million because that number is probably the people who reach out for medical help. But let's say you're going through an eating disorder and you haven't reached out for any of that kind of help, but you've gotten help for your family, or maybe you haven't even talked about it. So that number should be well in, like, I would say under 5 million or maybe even above
Easily.
easily, right?
Easily. So, thank you for the opportunity to share more information about it.
Thank you for joining me. This was wonderful.